we're given a y value of 5 and an x value of 4. And this says the derivative is that. So first thing I want to do is I want to multiply both sides by dx. So that says that dy equals x plus 1 over the square root of x dx. Well, that's made life interesting. So now I take the integral of both sides to solve for y. You see, that's why that dx is there. So now what? Well, this part's easy because the antiderivative of dy is just y. But now I got a problem. Now what do I do? Is it a basic? No. That means it's what? Algebra. So what kind of algebra am I going to do? What am I going to do with my algebra? Yeah, you could do that. But let me show you something. I'm going to move this over to the side. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do something called an aside. And that would work, right? But you've still got a lot of work to do after that. Well, how can I write the square root of x? Right? Well, take this to monomial division. So now, this would be x to the 1 minus 1/2 plus x to the what? Negative 1/2. Which is x to the 1/2 plus x to the negative 1/2. That's going to be my new integrand. And if this is my new integrand, what rule is it? Power. So that says I can replace that integrand by x to the 1/2 plus x to the minus 1/2. So that's going to be your algebra. X to the 1/2 plus x to the minus 1/2 dx. Now it just becomes anti-power rule. This would be x to the what? 3/2 divided by 3/2 plus x to the 1/2 divided by 1/2 plus c, or y is 2/3 x to the 3/2 plus 2x to the 1/2 plus c. Yeah, and by the way, after you do a bunch of these, you're going to say x to the 3/2 times 2/3. You'll do the flip in your head. But until then, put it in and then you'll get used to working with it the other way, because you'll do it often. So now I need to find c. They gave me that x is 4, which is very convenient, and y is 5. So that says that 5 equals 2/3. Now, the 3/2 is square root. So this is going to be the square root of 4 cubed plus 2, 1/2 is square root, square root of 4. Now, any questions about how I wrote it that way? Especially this guy.
Why?
Now, if we take it back to x to the 3 halves, right? 2 is the index of the radical. We could write it one of two ways. We could write it as the square root of x cubed, or we could write it as the square root of x cubed. And since x is 4, it's a heck of a lot easier working it with this guy other than that. And that's because when you take a look at 3 halves, 3 halves can be written as 1/2 times 3, or 3 times 1/2, the commutative property. This says square root, then cube. This says cube, then square root. And I always look to see, is it going to be easier to root it first, then power it? And that's usually the case. So that 5 is equal to 2/3 times 2 cubed plus 2 times 2. Oh, I forgot my plus c. Or 5 is equal to 2/3 times 8 plus 4 plus c. You see, this is going to be an adventure. Or 5 is equal to 16/3. Now, how many thirds is 4? If I multiply by 3 over 3, 12 thirds. I know I'm putting a lot of steps in, but when dealing with you guys in fractions. Or 5 is equal to 28 thirds plus c. So how many thirds is 5? 15 thirds. So I get that 15 thirds subtract 28 thirds equals c. Or c is 15 minus 28 is -13 thirds. So what's my answer? My answer, I've already lost it a long time ago, is 2/3 x to the 3 halves plus 2 x to the 1/2 minus 13 thirds.